Hello class, and welcome to the video lecture for Notes Receivable and Notes Payable. The first learning unit in the chapter goes over some important vocabulary and calculations of interest and maturity dates. First, let's go over the vocabulary. I'm looking at the vocabulary on page 502. Let's start with note. Note is short for promissory notes, which is a written promise by a borrower to pay a certain sum of money to the lender at a fixed future date. Next, we have interest, which is the cost of using money for a period of time. And we have note payable, which is a general ledger liability account representing amounts the company owes to others. And then we have note receivable, which is a general ledger asset account representing amounts owed by to the company by others. Now we have to issue, and that is not in the book, but I wanted to point it out. To issue is a verb, and it means to give. Next we have principal, which is the amount being borrowed, also called the face value. We have term, which is the amount of time money is being borrowed. We have issue date, which is the date the written promise to pay is given from one party to another. We have payee, which is the party to whom the money is payable. We have annual interest rate, which is the rate charged to the borrower for the use of money. We have maturity date, which is the date payment of principal and interest is due. We have maturity value, which is principal plus interest due on the maturity date. And we have maker, who is the party promising to pay, also called the borrower. The interest formula is principal times rate times time. The principal is the face value of the note, the amount being borrowed. The rate is the annual interest rate. You often have to convert a percentage to a decimal. For example, 10% is 0.10. Time in the interest formula must be converted to be expressed in terms of a year because the rate is expressed in terms of a year. We'll look at some examples of this in a moment. To determine maturity date, you need three things. These three things are the term of the note, the issue date, and if the term is expressed in days, you need a calendar. Now let's go over the basic rules for determining maturity date. If the term of the note is 1 year, the maturity date is 1 year after the issue date. Use the same day and the same month, just add a year. For example, if I issue you a 1-year $500 note on April 15, 2013, the maturity date is April 15, 2014. If the term of the note is expressed in months, count the number of months from the date of issue. For example, if I issue you a 2-month note on February 1st, the maturity date is April 1st. As another example, if I issue you a 2-month note on February 15th, the maturity date is April 15th. If the note is expressed in terms of days, count the exact number of days after the issue date. In this example from the textbook on page 521, A note is issued on June 21st. The number of days left in June, since June has 30 days, is 9. Then we have all the days in July and August, which is 31 each. At that point, we're up to 71 days. Since we only need 90 days, we know that the maturity date will be sometime in September. To be specific, we need 19 more days to make 90. That means the maturity date is September 19th. Now let's use the same example, but use the table on page 522 to find the maturity date instead of a calendar. The first step is to locate the table number that corresponds to the issue date of June 21st. Find June at the top of the table and 21 in the column to the left. Note the number where the two intersect, which is 172. Now add the number of days for the term of the note, 90, to 172. So 90 plus 172 is 262. Find 262 on the table and trace up the column to the month and to the left to the date. You'll find 262 is the intersection of September 19th, which is the maturity date. Let's do two problems from the end of the chapter. I'd like to turn your attention to exercise 14B-1 on page 545. It says, calculate the interest for the following. Remember that the formula for interest is principal times rate times time. So part A, the principal is equal to $18,000. The rate is 1%, which I'm going to write as 0.01, and the time is equal to 3 years. Remember, time always needs to be expressed in terms of years because the rate is expressed in terms of years. So to determine the interest, we have 18,000 times 0.01 times 3, which if you were to plug into your calculator is $540. Okay, so for part B, we have the principal is equal to $24,000. The rate is equal to 11%, which I'm going to write as 0.11, and the time is 10 months. Now we have to convert 10 months into years. We do that by multiplying the number of months by the fraction of a year that is a month. The fraction of a year that is a month is 1/12. So we multiply the number of months times the fraction of a year that is 1/12. So it's just 10 over 12. So to determine interest, we have 24,000 times 0.11 times 10 over 12, which is equal to $2,200. Okay, part C. The principal is equal to 10,000. The rate is equal to 18%, which I'll write as 0.18. And time equals 125 days. We need to convert days into years. We do that by multiplying the number of days by the fraction of a year that is a day. And a day is 1/360th of a year. It's conventional to use 360 days as a standard, so we get consistent results with our calculations. So we have 125 over 360. So interest is 10,000 times 0.18 times 125 over 360. If you plug that into your calculator, you should get $625. Okay, so now let's do exercise 14B-2 on page 545. It says determine the maturity date for each of the following without using tables. So part A, the term is 30 days, so we have a 30-day note. So we'll use the rules for days to determine the maturity date, which means to count 30 days after the issue date. So the issue date is July 17th. July has 31 days in it, so the number of days left in July is 31 minus 17 is 14 days left in July. So that's 14 of the 30 days until the maturity date, which means we have 16 days to go. 16 days into the next month of August is August 16th. So that's our maturity date. Okay, let's look at B. The term is 105 days. Oops. So again, we'll use the rules for days. The issue date is July 14th. So in July, since there's 31 days in July, and it was issued on the 14th, we have 17 days left in July. So that's 17 of the 105 days to maturity. So that means we have 105 minus 17 is 88 days left to go. Okay, so August has 31 days. So after August, we have 88 minus 31 equals 57 days to go. Okay, so September has 30 days. So after September, we have 57 minus 30 days equals 27 days to go. Okay, so October has 31 days. Since we only have 27 days left to go, we don't go to the end of October, and in fact that means our maturity date is October, sorry, I made an error there, October 27th. Okay, let's look at C. The term is 4 months, so we'll use the rules for months to determine the maturity date, which means count the number of months after the issue date. So the issue date is July 31st, and 4 months after July is November. Normally you would use the same day, the 31st, but November doesn't have 31 days in it, only 30. When that happens, you can use the last day of the month, which would be November 30th. So our maturity date is November 30th. Part D is just like parts A and B, so I'll skip that one and end Learning Unit 1 here. In the next Learning Unit, we'll cover the journal entries involved in note transactions.